Canada's making a whole bunch of false promises, such as increasing our defense budget to the minimum required amount that NATO has for acceptance into NATO, which is 2% of a country's GDP. Now, go back 10 years to 2014. Germany and Canada were both pulled aside by the teachers and said, you must pay 2%. Germany and Canada said, okay, give us 10 years. And then we got let back into the class. Well, 10 years fast forwarded is now. Germany has just reached 2%. Canada has not. We're sitting around 1.4%, 1.5%. And Justin Trudeau has the balls to say, well, in 8 years from now, in 2032, Canada will finally hit 2%. To which America and the rest of NATO has said, it's kind of now or never. So we're going to be taking a look at that in this video. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage y'all to smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow this channel. Now, I know this is probably unusual for those that are clicking on this channel thinking maybe it's an MSB video, maybe it's an action video. No, this is actually on House of Canada, and I'm trying something new and different, where normally I only talk about just what happens in Parliament on this channel, but we're going to veer off and just to see how things go. We're going to start off with what happened with the anti-NATO protests that took place in Montreal, because for those that don't know, Montreal got rioted, got looted, it got completely out of control. And well, Mélanie Joly, Justin Trudeau's mistress, condemns it. Woohoo, big whoop-de-doo, right?
Meantime, it was a chaotic scene last night in Montreal. Pro-Palestinian and anti-NATO protesters went on a rampage, angry over what they say is NATO's complicity with Israel while genocide is being conducted in Gaza. Police say smoke bombs were deployed during the march and 2 vehicles were set on fire. Metal barriers were thrown onto the streets and business windows were also smashed. Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly condemned the actions of the protesters.
What happened, the fact that there were violence on the streets of my hometown was completely unacceptable. What we saw was not peaceful protests. What we saw was actually violence, hate, and anti-Semitism, and this has no place on our streets. Of course, we believe in the freedom of speech. We believe in the freedom to demonstrate, but where we draw the line is when there's violence.
Right. So unfortunately, this has already been deemed as the gold standard for peaceful protests. Pro-Palestine protests in Canada have had like a blanket of immunity. And now, and only now, after they've thrown firecrackers and smoke grenades and fireworks at riot police and just police in general and burned cars, now the government's finally saying, okay, this doesn't seem to be peaceful. Well, hey, you've kind of allowed this behavior to happen and now it's spiraled out of control. So this is on you. But moving away from just the protests, we have to take a look at what's actually going on because that was a protest to, anti-NATO. So now let's take a look at what's actually going on within NATO. Here we go.
Commitment to increase its military spending in line with NATO's targets. The vow comes on day 2 of the Halifax International Security Forum and as Canada faces growing pressure to meet the target.
We know that we have to do more on defense and we are going to spend more money. But I also asked for their help today, and I think there's a huge opportunity for the investments that Canada needs to make, not just in how much money we have to spend, but what the capabilities we have to invest in and acquire.
More than 300 security analysts, politicians, and defense officials from dozens of countries are in Nova Scotia for the forum. Canada's defense spending has taken center stage after a Republican senator criticized Ottawa's failure to meet NATO's 2% spending target. The security threats from countries including Russia, China, and Iran have also been a key topic of discussion.
As Russia is expanding capital and efforts towards Ukraine, not achieving the objectives that they had set for themselves from the beginning. So they feed off each other. They are all interconnected.
All right, let's bring in retired Major General Dennis Thompson, former force commander of the multinational force and observers in the Sinai. General Thompson, thank you for being here. Ukraine is top of mind at the Halifax Security Forum this weekend. How do you see NATO support changing when Trump takes office?
I don't believe it's that anyone's in a position to predict what will happen when the U.S. administration changes in terms of support to Ukraine. It's hard to predict the unpredictable. What is true is that Mr. Trump and Mr. Putin are both transactional individuals, and the U.S., of course, has other fish to fry, not just Ukraine. So they're worried about the Middle East, they're worried about Taiwan, and they are actually somewhat worried about other minor conflicts, whether that be in Sudan or the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So it's very much a guessing game at this point, but what is sure is that if anything's going to happen, it'll be transactional in nature, some sort of bargain between these two powers.
Now, Trump has promised to end the war. How do you think he'll deliver on that?
He's the only one that is pushing to end the war. No winners, no losers. Everybody takes their loss. But most importantly, we just end the war. And that is the most common sense approach that we've seen since the beginning of pretty much all wars. Everyone is calling for Russia to lose, Ukraine to win, or if you're on the other side of the world, Russia to win, Ukraine to lose. Only Trump is saying, nope, no winners, no losers, only everyone has lost. So far, everybody has lost. We've lost money, we've lost people, we've lost morale. Everyone is on the edge of their seats waiting for this war to kind of inevitably lead to nuclear. And nobody wants that. And so after the election, you had President Donald Trump get on the phone with Putin, and they suggested that if Ukraine removes all bids for NATO for 20 years, so that Russia is no longer fully surrounded by NATO, then and only then would Russia go back home and leave Ukraine alone. No one from the Democrats, no mainstream media has actually supported this. That's the most common sense approach to de-escalate the entire situation. In fact, the left has only had the opposite reaction. Fire the missiles, and start World War III, which they already have.
No idea. I think Mr. Trump is the only one that can predict that outcome, how we would go about doing it. What I do believe will happen is that Europe and others will step up. Whether or not they are able to provide Ukraine with the tools necessary to get the job done is another question. And between now and the 20th of January, of course, there will be an acceleration in the war on the ground. And it's worth pointing out that neither side, neither Russia nor Ukraine, enjoy air superiority over the front. And that's the reason why that and the plethora of drones is the reason why this fight has devolved into an attritional war, where Russia has a 4-to-1 advantage in terms of manpower to draw on. And so if this were to continue, it's just a question of who gets exhausted first. And we're really not sure of that.
Let's talk about Canada's NATO defense spending. We continue to be criticized on that matter. Are Canada's spending targets by 2032 too little, too late?
Well, again, if we go back to the war in Ukraine, we've already passed the 1000th day in the war in Ukraine. We've seen what's gone on in the Middle East, and we know that China is eyeing Taiwan. So I'm not sure when the penny's going to drop, but it has to at some point, that we need to fix defense and get to that 2% spending target. It's worth pointing out that that's a target in terms of dollars and cents, and not necessarily capability. So those capabilities need to be defined, and I'm pretty sure that they have been. So what it means is there has to be the political will to get to 2%. And in order to get to 2%, you need to expand your defense industrial base. And they won't. The defense industry isn't going to move without solid long-term contracts. Yes, they know just as much as the government knows that we've been engaged, that the world's been in this multilateral conundrum for some time now, and that they need to fix defense. But they've done precious little to fix the actual gears, if you will, of the bureaucracy that would make it possible to spend the 2%, because that's the issue. Can you spend the money if you have it? And so there needs to be a first principles review, if you will, of Canada's defense procurement processes in order to get to that target. But it's vitally important because we lack many of the capabilities necessary to survive on the modern battlefield.
Interesting. Okay, we will have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your insight, General Tom.
I mean, it's getting so out of hand that Trump has said, right, in the past that if Russia were to invade Canada, then he would have to take a look and see if Canada's been paying the bills. Spoiler alert, we haven't. And out of Trump's own mouth, then Russia would get to do whatever they wanted with that land because they haven't paid the bills. And that's a very, very scary statement. So Canada's vow to now increase our defense spending budget to the minimum 2% requirement, well, that's something that should have been done a long time ago. But here we are, crappy leadership, heading into just an insane time. And I think that we really need to expedite Donald Trump being sworn in and Trudeau being sworn out, put Pierre Poilievre in there and just stop all the wars. Focus on growing Canada, focus on growing Canada's economy, focus on growing Canada's defense, grow our own weapons, have our own soldiers, increase our military, and make us, not necessarily a heavy hitter, but a force not to be reckoned with. That's my own personal opinion. I would absolutely love to know yours. That's the end of the video, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to drop a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.